All right, what I wanted to talk about today is you've probably heard of, he's probably about 13 now, your old kid named Desmond is amazing. He's a drag kid, so to speak. He likes to dress up and all of that kind of stuff like drag queens do, which is his right. You know, he's done some, he's attracting the wrong kind of people. There's been some instances like there's a convicted pedophile over, I want to say in the UK, but I'm not sure, in Europe somewhere, who's written blog posts that say Desmond is hot and feels sexy performing. This is like an 11, 12, 13-year-old kid. He's definitely, being exploited by his parents, I think, too. And, I don't have anything against people dressing like in drag, like totally. Even kids, if your kid wants to dress up, in dresses and, wigs and all that kind of stuff, let them. I mean, little girls are usually allowed to do that. Why can't little boys if they want to? But my only problem with it is that drag and drag queens are way too over-sexualized for kids. Is a very sexual, pornographic type, well, some's pornographic, issues. There's another kid that's a little bit younger than Desmond that was photographed posing next to a pretty famous drag queen, I don't know names, I'm sorry, who's wearing nothing but high heels and a little scrap of cloth over his genitals. As a little kid, 10-year-old kid. So that bothers me. His mom exploits him. I've seen video of this kid doing a striptease. I mean, he didn't get naked, obviously, but he had two sets of clothes on, and he danced around very provocatively, taking off the outside set of clothes and tossing it around and doing different things while grown-ass men threw dollar bills at him. Apparently, this took place in a bar called the $3 Bill. I want to say that was in New York. And another thing that kind of bothers me is that he's being indoctrinated to believe that conservative people want to kill him. His mom is, here's a quote, "What scares you most these days?" Wendy Naples asked her son Desmond on camera. "Being murdered," the child replied with a nervous smile. Like, that the kid shouldn't have to live in fear like that. People have been reporting this family, like to social services and whatnot, because they think the kid's being abused, sexually exploited, all of that. Apparently, the social services have checked in. They don't think there's anything wrong. I believe that in their mind, the parents and the supporters of this kid believe that anybody who is against him performing in public is against him, period, is against drag and all of that stuff, period, and they're hateful and bigoted and want to kill him. And that's just ridiculous. That's just a few of the things that bother me, and there's been a lot of other videos made by other people. There's been articles, whatnot, made about all of these things. Pretty sure Blair White did a video about him. Even Philip DeFranco, I think, talked about him at one point. But the big thing that I have a problem with, I have a problem with all of that. But there's another huge issue that I have a problem with, and that is Desmond's pal, Michael Alig. Michael Alig is not amazing. Michael Alig is a drug-addicted, psychopathic murderer, in my opinion. The murderer part's not my opinion, that's a fact. This is a guy who he was back in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s. There was this group in New York that called themselves the Club Kids. Michael Alig was I think one of the founders or whatever of this group. And they were flamboyant and over the top and, like to party and dance and carry on. And so club owners in New York would pay them to come and, be at their club so that customers would come, because people would show up there just to see these guys. And RuPaul, just keep this in mind, RuPaul was a part of this group back in the early 80s, or late 80s, early 90s. And Desmond is Amazing was inspired at 2 years old by RuPaul. And now he's hanging out with Michael Alig. Now, this Michael Alig, there was an episode of American Justice that was done on him that I saw. That's where I first heard of it, was on that show. Apparently there's been some other shows like for Investigation Discovery done about him. I haven't seen those. There was a book written, I forget what the name of it was, but that was what was turned into Party Monster, the movie Party Monster, which is basically about Michael Alig. And then, there's been like a couple documentaries and, other stuff going on. This guy's kind of gross. This is one thing that just stood out to me out of all the things I read about him. Quote, other instances, he would urinate on clubgoers or urinate in their drinks. Like, ugh. But this, I guess, they kept escalating. They, more and more drugs, more and more excess. And at one point, a friend of theirs, or maybe one of the club kids, named Andre Melendez, he went by the name Angel, and he wore angel wings all the time. He was at their house. I don't know if he was living there, if he was visiting, but he was at the house of Michael Alig and Robert D., quote-unquote, Freeze Riggs. And Alig and Riggs decided, well, I don't know if they decided, but the story goes that Michael Alig and Angel got into the tussle, and he was choking him or something. But anyway, Riggs says he picked up a hammer and bashed this guy, Angel, over the head a few times just to get him off of Alig. And I guess then Alig smothered him or something, tried to pour Drano down his throat and put duct tape over his mouth. Apparently he was unconscious at this point. Maybe he was already dead. But so the guy's dead. The roommate, Riggs, hit him over the head with the hammer, and then it sounds like Alig strangled him and suffocated him after that. This was on March 17th, 1996, so they'd been at this for like a decade, maybe. They killed him, and then they didn't know what to do with his body. So they put it in their bathtub and put ice on it and left it there for several days. And then when it started to smell too bad and they decided they really, really needed to get rid of it, they made a deal where I'm guessing Riggs is the one who was giving it, that Michael Alig would be the one to dismember the body, cut up Angel's body. I don't know. I guess went to the store and bought some knives, and I don't know what, but he cut up Angel's body for 3 bags of heroin. That kind of tells you, I think. And the fight was over a drug debt. I don't know if I mentioned that. But he agreed to cut up this rotting corpse. It's bad enough to cut up a body right after you kill it or within a few hours after you kill it. That's really disgusting, and I don't know what kind of a person can do that, but I really don't understand what kind of a person can cut up a rotting body. Oh my God, that just... Then the two of them put his body into boxes and suitcases and dumped them in the river. I want to say the Hudson River. This is New York, so probably the Hudson River. And people noticed that Angel was gone, and I wonder where Angel is. And apparently Michael Alig was going around telling anybody who would listen that he had killed Angel and dumped him in the river. And people just thought he was full of it, bragging, just being weird. But he wasn't. And I'm not sure how it happened. I think some of the body parts started to surface or something. But anyway, they found some of the body parts at some point. And at some point, the police started looking at Michael Alig, and his roommate confessed. And I want to say Alig confessed. I never saw what happened to the roommate. I think he got the same amount of time, but I don't know about when he was paroled or anything. I believe they were both given 20 years, but Alig only served 17 years. I want to say he got out in 2014. And he was on parole and all kinds of stuff. After getting out, he was in some trouble. He was doing some different things wrong. In 2017, he was arrested for trespassing and possession of methamphetamine, which tells me, he hadn't probably changed much. And now we've got this person who, a movie called Party Monster, and I guess I would have to agree with that. This murderer, this murderer and dismember, or I don't know how else you say it, this disgusting murderer is hanging around with a child. I don't think he really does drag anymore, Michael Alig, but he does wear some makeup. And now I forget, what's his name? Ernie Glam. So a friend of Michael Alig's from back in the Club Kid days named Ernie Glam. I'm assuming that's a fake name, or maybe he changed it, I don't know. Apparently he has a YouTube channel or something like that, and one day he had on Desmond and Michael Alig. And I'm not sure what they were talking about, but there's an instance where they're saying, oh yeah, we can do this and do that. And Ernie Glam, I believe it is, says, oh yeah, and do ketamine on the couch. And him and Desmond both go through the actions of, snorting ketamine off of your hand. And then if you look closely, there's some kind of a, abstract artwork piece hanging on the wall behind them that has Rohypnol written on it. These are the kind of people that this Wendy Naples or Naples, these are the kind of people she lets her child hang out with, starting at like 10 years old. And I want to say he's probably around 13 now, because they were saying he was 11 in 2018 or so. Desmond has also met RuPaul. I don't know how much time he has spent with RuPaul, but I do know they met, and RuPaul thought he was fabulous and, wanted to encourage the kid, which, to me wasn't such a big deal until I found out researching this a little, that he was actually part of the Club Kids and a part of that whole scene. No, I'm not saying that makes him a murderer or anything close to that, but, it's just a really strange coincidence to me, or whatever you would call it. It's kind of creepy. I don't think that this poor kid should be hanging out with any of these people. Yeah. And then there's this guy over in Europe, UK somewhere, I think, talking about how sexy he thinks Desmond is. He's got like this whole website. And apparently he talks about other kids too. There's another little kid known as something Lactatia. And I want to say that's the kid that posed with the naked drag queen, which I don't see how that was not child pornography or some kind of child abuse, especially if that child saw him naked without his little scrap of cloth covering his junk. That to me is just disturbing. Yeah. Michael Alig is definitely not amazing, and cannot understand how a mother, she knows these things. She knows about this guy. To her credit, she's disgusted, she says, by the guy over in Europe, and, she's tried to help, tried to get his website taken down, and a few other people. But she's the one putting him out there to behave sexually. Drag is about over-exaggerating female sexuality and femininity. That's all it is. And that's no place. Adult drag is no place for children. If they want to do kids drag that has nothing to do with strip teases or, acting like grown women and being all sexual and whatnot, that's kids doing it together, that's fine. Playing dress up, doing the catwalk, even sashaying their hips a little bit. Who cares? But you get into this other stuff. You push it. You get your kid doing strip tease. You get your kid, doing these other sexual dances and moves and, imitating ketamine use, which is a party drug. How do you get your kid into that situation? And why don't you get him out? It amazes me. And I don't want to say, well, yeah, I do. The parents are totally taking advantage of this kid and exploiting him. Apparently neither of them work. They have fans who set up GoFundMes for them to pay their bills and have Christmas and, do all these other things. So I'm guessing, they're seeing this kid as their cash cow. And he's not always, making enough money to support them. That's pretty disturbing. And it's really disturbing to me, especially when you talk about the striptease and the murderer and the ketamine imitation. I hope to God this kid isn't actually doing ketamine with these freaks. Sometimes he does look like he's drugged, though. I do have to point that out. Sometimes he does look like he's drugged. Maybe he takes a medication that makes him feel that way. I believe he's special needs, possibly autistic. So, maybe he's got some kind of medication that causes that. But there are times when he seems like he's drugged. He's like moving in slow motion and talking very slowly. Yeah. The kid is, great that he's got that much confidence in himself and whatnot. You got to worry about what's going to happen when he's not a kid anymore and he's not unique or, different. He's just another drag queen. What's going to happen to him when all that, kind of fame probably fizzles out and is off to the side. I worry about him. I can't believe the social services aren't doing anything. Nothing. They've investigated. I read somewhere, I want to say there was like 500 and some calls made, within a certain amount of time to the social services in this kid's county or whatever. I'm so glad that people are showing concern and speaking up for this kid. I just wish that more people in charge were paying attention and seeing what's going on here. I'm not sure why they're not. That's kind of got me baffled. And of course, it's a privacy thing. I can't call them and be like, why aren't you doing this? They can't even tell me, whether they have a case on this kid, I don't think. Yeah, it'd be really nice to know what their reasoning is for kind of ignoring or whatever you would call this. Yeah, I guess that's all I got to say about this. It's just, yeah, poor kid being exploited, hanging around with murderers and drug users and naked people, strip tease, strip bars, and a murderer. a murderer who cut up a rotting body. Miss Nothing said, okay. I don't see how, but I think I'm starting to repeat myself because this is just so disturbing. I'm going to cut it short here. So, disturbing. Very disturbing.